was my father and his paedophilia and the murders that he committed. Well, I have talked about those in great detail in the past. Unfortunately, we are now in the present. I think I was a lot more comfortable in the dim, distant past, actually. I have made videos also about rogue landlords, and I had seen nothing until I returned to England. I thought I was badly off in Wales, good heavens. I got to a retirement home in New Milton on the 25th of July 2016. And what had happened was that my flat there, Grange Retirement Homes, had been bought by a landlady named Sheena Wilson. Sheena, not Sheila. And she did not have permission to sublet it to anyone with a chronic disease. Now she knew that, and she also knew that I have a chronic disease, namely COPD. I also have PTSD, which was relevant. So, on the very day that I arrived, because the contract had been sent to me in the post, she did not have the contract with my signature on it. I could have technically sent it back. But stupidly, I decided to do it there and then. I met her in the flat. It was just she and I. I was sat opposite her. I handed my copy of the contract over with my signature on it, and she shredded it in front of my eyes into tiny, tiny pieces which she took away with her, no chance of sticking it back together. It was a 5-year contract. Oh, excuse me, I seem to have a cold or something. A 5-year contract, and she substituted for that one which had less than 2 months to run. 2 months as opposed to 5 years, and which expired on the 9th of September 2016. So on my very first day back in England, in New Milton, I was immediately aware that I could be evicted in considerably less than 2 months, about 6 weeks in fact. And she made a point of making me more aware of that. 3 days after I arrived, she phoned me and told me not to bother unpacking. I didn't, any more than I already had. And 4 days after, i.e. the day after that, she rang again with the same message: do not bother unpacking. So my entire time in New Milton was spent expecting eviction. She had made a lot of money out of me because I had been paying rent before I arrived. There was an overlap in contracts. Anyway, exactly 8 weeks after I arrived, by which time numerous other things had, it was like a jinx. Numerous other things had happened, including a broken arm. This never had physiotherapy and doesn't work very well anymore. And I'm right-handed. Exactly 8 weeks after my arrival, she told me that she did in fact want me out. She wouldn't serve me with a Section 21 though, so it was a verbal eviction. And she told me that Grange Retirement Homes would sue her if she did not get me out. It was therefore preferable for her to pay me to leave, to give me back my deposit plus 1 month's rent plus a bit over for a removal van. And when I considered my options, which weren't many, I accepted that offer. I just left where to go. And on the 18th of October, let me see, 8 weeks after, I'm sorry, I've lost track very slightly. Anyway, on the 18th of October, she'd basically told me that I could choose between my daughter and my dog, because there was the possibility of a place in Southampton where I would be close to my daughter, but might not be able to have my dog. Or a lovely place back in Wales, absolutely beautiful, where I could have my dog, but would not be able to see my daughter, clearly, not very often, from 250 miles or so away. The following day, you could almost say the choice was made for me. What a coincidence. I tied my dog outside Costa Cafe, which I'd done frequently. After our visits to the duck pond, where I would throw sticks to him, etc., I used to go and take a break at Costa Coffee. And on that day I was breathless with the COPD. And on that day, for the first time, I couldn't get a window table, so I couldn't see him. Long story short, he was taken from there and handed over to the RSPCA. I was told that my chances of getting him back were virtual zero. I was told that 44% of animals taken by the RSPCA are put down. Nothing good. I hope I'm not rambling. Eventually, I'm now breaking up the sequence, but against all of the odds, 4 months after that, I did get him back. By that time, however, I had chosen, as it were, the Southampton hovel, and it is a hovel. And I had chosen it for two reasons. One, because it was close to my daughter, well, both of them actually. And two, because it was close to where Danny was being held at Ashley Heath, or at least it was close compared to Wales. And I thought I had a better chance of fighting for him from there. It didn't look an appealing place, but it looked all right. If I'd had any sense, I would have taken note of the fact that there was a dehumidifier pointed into the bathroom on the date that I viewed it, on full blast, drying up the damp in the bathroom. But I took it, so there I am in this place, and in point of fact not seeing my daughter, not much. And Danny is at Ashley Heath, and I'd been there about a week when the floor flooded. Clearly from underneath. It was right down the centre of the floor. I subsequently found out from the water board that it was almost certainly a broken drainage pipe. And I also now have a letter telling me that 500 gallons of water, or roughly 2,000 litres of water, were passing through that place every single day from May to September of 2016. I got there on the 11th of November. Not many people today think in gallons, but I do. So if you think in terms of 2,000 litres per day passing through a 2-room flat, somebody somewhere should have twigged, right, that there was something very wrong. And in fact, environmental health had been called to the property in that summer of that year, last year. Unfortunately, they had not forced the landlord to do anything about it, and he hadn't done anything about it. So my list of rogue landlords has grown very, very considerably. First, Sheena Wilson. He knew I had COPD and sublet a flat to me without permission, knowing I would be evicted from it. And then a man named Buta Sandhu, S-A-N-D-H-U, and the Buta is B-O-O-T-A, Buta Sandhu, with a sing in the middle. So that was the very first time it rained, when I'd been there about a week. That one, when I put the heater on full blast, dried up of its own accord, more or less, leaving the most dreadful stench behind it for several weeks. And then the next time it rained, it happened again, and it was much, much, much worse. Everything was squelching underfoot, and everywhere I walked, water sprang up through the floor. Well, I was extremely depressed about Danny, and the fact that I actually was not seeing my daughter, having moved to Southampton to do precisely that. Or either daughter, even, or my grandchildren. So I reluctantly carried on paying rent without the landlord having done a damn thing about it. He tried to tell me it was coming from the boiler cupboard, although it very clearly was not coming from the boiler cupboard. There would have been a trail of water from the boiler cupboard, and there wasn't. And then, actually, a whole sequence of things. On the 30th of December, the day before New Year's Eve, I had extremely bad news from my doctor, except that it came via the chemist. They didn't see me, they didn't phone me, they just chose to let the chemist tell me. Then I think it was on the 2nd, I had a falling out with my daughter when she returned from Florida. And then on the 4th, I noticed the wall next to my bed. Unfortunately, my bed was positioned so that the length of it was running along the outer wall, and the wall next to it was soaking wet. And in the morning, my mattress and my pillows were covered in black mold when I peeled everything back. I left that day, 4th January. Spent about 5 nights in guest houses, which is extremely expensive, and then managed to get accommodation as a lodger in Salisbury. And I'd been there 8 days exactly when the RSPCA rang me and said, "You can have your dog back now." It was actually a nice lodging. I was very comfortable there. It was mentally and physically as good as it could get, really. But having been told I could have my dog back against all the odds, clearly I was going to take him back. And my landlady there would not have a dog. She had a little dog, a very elderly King Charles Spaniel who was nervous, very nervous. So I had to find somewhere else to go with my dog, and it couldn't be the flat in Southampton, because the flat in Southampton by that time had been evaluated, or somewhere around then was evaluated by environmental health again. And there is penetrative damp, there is rising damp, the heating is inadequate, there's no hot water. Well, I knew there was no hot water, of course, and I knew the heating was inadequate. Didn't work properly. So the landlord in Southampton has been requested by environmental health to do something about it. He hasn't yet, and his excuse is that I'm not there. Well, I spent 5 nights there on a wet bed with my face in black mould, and then came away again. This is turning into a ramble, and it's a bloody long one. Clearly, as I say, I had to find somewhere that would take both me and my dog. And here I am, for the moment. So that's actually just another little bit about rogue landlords. Sheena Wilson in New Milton, followed by Buta Sandhu in Southampton. And I'm not going to say any more at the moment because I can be overheard.